Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Martin with the Illinois Channel, and once again, I'm joined with Jeff Berkowitz of Public Affairs TV in Chicago. Jeff, I want to start off in just some breaking news that came out as we tape this on December 10. As expected, the Federal Reserve just cut interest rates by a quarter of a point. They said they might have one more interest rate cut in 2026. But if they do just one, as they're projecting, that would be a slowing of interest rates, which at least kind of indicates that the economy doesn't necessarily then, in their estimation, need a great deal of additional help by lower rates. But before we go on, I'll remind the audience you have basically a PhD in economics, except for your, your thesis. But what is your take before we move on to some of the other issues we're going to discuss?
Well, the important thing, Terry, not just that it's almost a PhD, it's from the University of Chicago, Chicago School of Economics, University of Chicago Econ Department, Milton Friedman. So money matters. And these days, for various reasons, we don't just say the money supply matters, interest rates matters. So there's a lot of attention when these meetings occur every, 6 times a year, essentially. And so this meeting that will happen this afternoon, the Federal Reserve Open Market Committee was predicted, it's still predicted what you just said, that the range of interest rates is coming down. The short way of saying it, the interest rate that the Fed tries to influence and does is coming down from 3.75% to 3.5%. That's the federal funds rate. More importantly, the thinking is many other interest rates that matter to people in the economy will go down slightly more. But then, more importantly, as you said, the thinking is going into this meeting that there won't be just a few dissents. There might be almost like 50-50. Almost half the decision makers, not quite, are thinking maybe they shouldn't cut rates. Maybe this time they should start raising rates because they're concerned about inflation not coming down recently, but starting to go up or continuing to go up. The Fed has had a long-term target of having the Fed rate at 2%. It's not 2%. It's the federal inflation rate, however we measure it, CPI and so forth, is really closer to 2.5
All right. Let's not
to 3.
give a PhD answer
No,
here. Let's move along
no, but
because
the
we
point
got
is,
other
Terry,
issues.
just excuse me. This is very important because it means they're concerned about inflation, and therefore, if they're going to start raising rates in the future, that
Well, they're
may
not going to
be
raise
right
rates in the
or may be
future. They
wrong.
signal they're going to cut again, maybe one
No,
time. So
oh,
that's where the
well,
economy
I
is.
think,
All right,
no,
all right.
I
Look,
think you may have got,
I
yeah.
just bring this up because it's breaking news. I'll close with this. This was anticipated, widely anticipated. There's not a whole lot of reaction thus far. This is about maybe a half an hour after the decision came down. The Dow Jones is up about 0.6%. NASDAQ is slightly down, and the S&P 500 is slightly up. So it's as I say, anticipated. The other breaking news, which isn't really something we're going to delve on, but you and I do what I think is try to be more insightful news coverage and more balanced than what we often get from the national news. As I say, you just bring your expertise in economics to this news about the rate cut. But also going on is that the world of news has changed, and today CBS News just announced that Tony, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Dokopil, will be the new CBS News anchor. That's under the new head of CBS News, Barry Weiss, trying to bring a little more balance to CBS, which has widely been criticized by many as having been moving too far to the left and always taking a leftist spin rather than a more balanced spin on news. So we'll just have to see. This is part of the panoply that we all live in at this time. Since I kind of threw that at you, let me get your response to what that, if you have one.
Right. Quick response. Barry Weiss, for people who don't know, has been a long time liberal. So she's hardly an historical
She's
conservative,
no
but
MAGA
she is.
follower.
no MAGA, but she has split. She has split with the ultra liberals, the ultra woke liberals, and that's important. So she's still a liberal. She still differs. She still has a partner who I guess she refers to as her wife. And she knows many, when she spoke to the Federalist Society, who invited her as a conservative group, and they accepted her. She said, I know there are many people who differ with me on my choices on those issues, and yet I am with you on many other issues now. So this is a big, big change that channel CBS News is making. They are starting to react
Let me
and
throw
be,
in one other
if
thing,
not,
and this is
well,
an issue.
big
I
deal.
mean,
It's
we
a
got
big
other
deal.
things
It's a
we
big
want to
deal.
talk about, but again, this is going on, and how all of us get our information, we need to factor this in when we hear information. Just other people commenting on this. Uh, just on Sunday, 60 Minutes, which I will say used to be my favorite show to watch. Now I rarely watch it because CBS News has been so infiltrated with just a leftist sentiment. You had Leslie Stahl interviewing Marjorie Taylor Greene, and it was kind of, this Leslie taking a very antagonistic approach instead of a neutral approach to interviewing this congresswoman who has broken to some extent. She's still a real conservative, but instead of Leslie just opening up a balanced interview, she's taken this hostile approach. And so I think this is the thing. Why is there a Jeff Berkowitz with Public Affairs TV? Why is there a Terry Martin with Illinois Channel TV? Why is Bill O'Reilly out there no longer with Fox? Why is Megyn Kelly on her own channel and others? This is the new landscape of media and news, and all of us being news consumers need to kind of see what's happening with this landscape, and that you need different sources, but you also need to know when the source you're getting is not a balanced approach, not even attempting to be a balanced approach, but are basically spokespeople for either the hard right or hard left, and we shall see if this change at CBS News makes them better and whether it has an impact on NBC and ABC as well. But as they say in the news business, only time will tell. Any last words before we move along?
Right. People have to know they have to curate their own news. They can't rely on their favorite station, because if they do, they're missing out on the world. Whether their favorite station is MSNBC, now MS Now, or whether it's Fox News. Cannot rely, folks, liberal or conservative. You got to do a little thinking for yourself. You got to broaden your outlook. You got to curate the news. If you watch Fox all the time, occasionally watch CNN, maybe even MSNBC or MS Now. If you watch MSNBC all the time, you got to watch Fox. Because just the example is, if you only watched MSNBC, you were shocked to learn that Biden was basically mentally incapacitated. But if you watched Fox, you actually saw it. Not because they're biased, because they showed it. But if you only watch Fox, you're going to miss some things you could learn and should from CNN.
The other thing,
and
and let me add,
MSNBC.
and this will lead into the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the whole immigration issue, the open border under Biden. During Biden's tenure, Fox was the only one of the major networks, not NBC, not CBS, not ABC. Fox was the only one to assign a reporter to covering what was going on at the border, and basically the other three networks just paid no attention to that. And that was
Right.
the leading issue in the 2024 presidential election, the border being open and the impact of all these illegal immigrants coming across the border on the nation. It's just shocking at how the news, can you imagine Walter Cronkite ignoring this, and how the news has changed in our lifetime with our longevity. I mean, we know how the news has changed, and so it's important that we mention it. Speaking of that, let's move along.
Let me just, Terry,
All right,
it's
go
important.
ahead.
I can say it in 30 seconds. Similarly, You know, Google, everybody knows Google. You know the second most site that people go to? YouTube. YouTube. And how do I know this? Because recently I did a 7-minute video that has now gotten 50,000 views, which is a fair number for me, going to 100,000. I discovered a trick. That's all. And I learned that YouTube is the second most popular site to Google. So people need to go to YouTube if they want to see a lot of things that they're otherwise missing.
Well, the other thing
So they
is,
got to see
I'm
that's
going to play a
important.
clip
You know?
here, a couple of clips from Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly, Megan Kelly, I don't have a clip from her, but both of them who had been with network news, corporate news, have all said they would never go back to working for a corporate news entity again. The freedom that they have to express, and by the way, the former, if I don't drop her name here, former 60 Minutes, Lara Logan, has her own show as well, former 60 Minutes correspondent, who basically said the same thing. In each case, they didn't want to be controlled by corporate masters. Now, that said, one of the big issues in Illinois, in Chicago right now, and this is issues that are going to be going forward into 2026. As everyone who watches us know, 2026 is going to be an election year of a new Congress and governors and senators. So this issue matters, and that's what's happening around the country with these illegal immigrants and the effort by the Trump administration to get a handle on it. And as everyone in Chicago and Illinois knows, Governor Pritzker, who may be running for president, he is running for a third term as governor, has been fighting the Department of Homeland Security and saying, as a sanctuary state, they're not going to cooperate with what the Department of Homeland Security is trying to do in Chicago. And of course, that has also brought out a lot of protests in Chicago. Jeff, we'll get your comment, but first let's hear what Mr. Bill O'Reilly had to say about the governor not cooperating with DHS.
The Homeland Security comes out with a press release, and it says that under Pritzker for this year, 2025 so far, there's 1,768 criminal illegal aliens, all right, that have not been turned over to ICE. 5 homicides, 141 assaults, 23 burglaries, 24 dangerous drug offenses, 10 predatory sexual offenses, 15 weapons. Even though those are the charges against the undocumented people, Pritzker won't hand them over.
So there he is, Jeff. A lot of issues there relative to crime. The governor has said that he's for removing illegal aliens here who have criminal records. He's just not for removing those whose only crime was entering the country illegally. You're in Chicago. You know how this is played. You know the sentiments. What's your response to what Mr. O'Reilly had to say? And by the way, let me in case people missed it, he was quoting from a press release from the Department of Homeland Security. Those are the numbers they're putting out. All right, go ahead.
Okay. What I want to see, Terry, is I want to see the equivalent of what we used to call in academia a refereed article, something that I can trust. I don't want to see just a press release. That's fine. I'll read the press release. I want to know the data behind it. I want to know who's got the data, and I want to see it debated. I mean, he says there 1,768 criminal violations, meaning not just it is a crime to come across the border illegally, but he's saying a criminal act was committed. Does he mean it was accused, it was convicted, and what was happened? I want to see the damn details, okay?
No, he's not saying, he's not saying, the intent there is not convicted. They didn't go to court.
Well,
well,
I want to see that, Terry, and because if it's
so here's the question. Then I want to
1,700 allegations. I don't know what to do with that. Okay, that's all. And I don't want people talking about that number unless they know what the hell it is and they've seen the data behind it. And I don't care whether it's CBS.
Hang on, before you go on a rant. Yeah. I want to say neither you or I. Yes. O'Reilly's quote here was
Yeah.
from yesterday. That's when this was
Right.
posted on YouTube. So it's new stuff. Neither you or I have read this. So before you start haranguing, you haven't read the press release. I haven't. We're trusting Mr. O'Reilly. The question I want to bring up here is, will the governor, he's running for re-election, we know that. We can guess that he may be running for president. He seems to be. A lot of people think he will. Will the governors fight with the Department of Homeland Security over these illegal immigrants, which is beyond a question? They're illegal by fact that came in here with illegally. Will this hurt him in a third term run? Will it hurt him should he run for president? You know the feelings in Chicago more than I. I'm downstate. What is the feeling in Chicago, and your thought of whether or not he will be impacted one way or the other?
It will hurt him definitely in Illinois if, here's the big if, there's a guy running for governor in the Republican primary named Ted Dabrowski. He's articulate, he's thoughtful, he's data-based. He's got $1 million now, which is $1 million more than the front runner, the guy who ran last time, Darren Bailey, okay? And if he can raise that to 2 or 3 million in the primary so he can get his message out, you'll hear Ted's message, not just about immigration, but you'll hear that, but you'll hear about the lousy schools, the lousy performance of the public schools, especially with minorities, blacks reading at 10 to 20% at grade level. You'll hear about crime coming down, but doing much worse in Chicago than other cities. And for the 14th year in a row, tops in homicides. So you'll hear about you'll hear all of that. We say crime, we say schools, we taxes.
Okay, so the
highest
point
than
is there's
anywhere
going to be a
else.
whole lot of issues, and a lot of these are interconnected with the impact of the illegals. Not all of them. The Chicago public schools have been failing for a long time, long before Biden became president. But there is an
40 years,
impact
40
of
years.
these, and I would say you hear about we played a clip last show about flipping Chicago red. I forget the individual's name who was testifying before a House committee in Congress, but she was saying about the impact on the black community in Chicago by these illegal immigrants. Now, that said, I want to play one more clip from Bill O'Reilly's show, BillO'Reilly.com. Let's hear what he had to say yesterday.
So, what is this? Federal law is over, federal law trumps, pardon the pun, state and local laws. That's what the Constitution said. So if you pass a crazy law in your state and the feds go, no, then the federal law takes precedent. And Pritzker goes, I don't care. I'm not cooperating with federal law. You know, JB, if I'm Attorney General, I'm coming after you with everything I got.
So Jeff, there you are. You also have a law degree, I should say for the public, and here, Bill O'Reilly. Is Bill O'Reilly right? I mean, federal law does trump state law, and when the governor is releasing these people, as we saw in the earlier clip, that allegedly have criminal backgrounds and are engaged in allegedly criminal activity, does O'Reilly have a point that the governor, if the Attorney General of the United States wanted to, could indict the governor for not following federal law and working cooperatively with DHS?
Well, largely the president controls the Department of Justice. He is the prime executive. It's supposed to be, some say, independent. It is generally independent, but it's never completely independent of the president of the United States, whether it's a Democrat there or a Republican. And so, yes, J.B. Pritzker could be indicted. Could he be convicted? Could he be convicted? And if it's less than an indictment, if DOJ just raised the issue in federal courts, then it could be decided. And would the U.S. Supreme Court decide in Pritzker's favor or in Trump's favor? I don't know. I really don't know. It's a close call, okay? And it should be debated and thought about that way, wherever your preference may be. It's not an easy call. because although federal law generally preempts state law, as we all know, I think Brown v. Board of Education, I think that date, if I remember is right, is really the landmark case in
Look, here's the other.
education that you
Okay,
can't. Here, no, let me just finish, Terry. Don't just let me
go.
finish. Short. 1954. President Eisenhower said to Orville Faubus, I was the governor, you're not standing in that door and not letting black kids in that schoolroom, okay? And they should go just down the street, be separate but equal, because it's no longer equal, okay? So he sent the troops down and Faubus
To
back down.
enforce the
and
Supreme Court
federal law.
ruling of 1954. This was around 1957, if I recall, the Little Rock Seven, and they were forcing, they were integrating the schools. The governor tried to block it. Eisenhower federalized the National Guard. So yes, it's
Right,
a precedent that Trump has as president, and
But
now it's the
hold on,
governor,
hold on.
so to speak, standing in the schoolhouse door. And by the way,
Right, but
same
hold
with
on.
Kennedy and George Wallace in Alabama, 1962.
Same thing. Exactly right. Exactly right. Boy, did they thank Bobby Kennedy because he spoke to JFK and he said, you got to do something here. Don't worry about the politics. RFK was saying to his brother, don't worry about the damn politics. You got to show them who's who and who's standing with the people who want this, who immigration is legal and blacks have rights as much as whites. You can thank Bobby Kennedy for JFK doing the right
Okay,
thing.
I want to get to this clip because it fits into what we're saying and the impact politically, whether or not the governor is going to be indicted. Will he be indicted by the voters of Illinois? Will he be indicted by the Democrats, the people, especially black Democrats, who have voted 90% historically with Democrats? Is this going to undermine the support for the Democratic Party, the support for J.B. Pritzker in Cook County at large? This is Stephen A. Smith. Back on Labor Day, there were 58 people shot in Chicago, and Stephen A. Smith was on News Nation with Chris Cuomo. Here's what he had to say at that time about the political implications. Let's go.
Yo, what are you going to do about it? It's one thing to say, Trump, don't send in the National Guard. It's another thing for the president to come out of his mouth, I'm here to help if they ask for it, and then for you to say no, and then try to implement laws in place that would prohibit him from sending help. Wait a minute. When that happens, you can't point the finger at Bill O'Reilly. You can't point the finger at Chris Cuomo. You can't point the finger at people that are and just say, oh, it's really not politics. Who the hell are they? It's all about politics if you're a governor and you're going to take that position.
So, Jeff, according to Stephen A. Smith, who has some sense, I think, about what's going on in the world, at least his opinion matters to a lot of people, is he right? Will there be a political backlash that could hurt President or Governor Pritzker in Illinois, especially in Chicago, from his stand that he's taken relative to his fight with DHS?
Well, you know, there is a sanctuary, there are laws in Illinois called sanctuary state laws, making Illinois a sanctuary state. There are city ordinances in Chicago making Chicago a sanctuary city. And that is also true, I think, in other states, other cities, but Illinois and Chicago are the extreme, And so if it ever makes it, this issue, to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they're going to look at this, and they're going to look at the state laws, and they're not going to say it's automatic.
I've always wondered
it's
why.
automatic.
But I look. I've always wondered, and it was also true under Governor Rauner. How can we be opposing the federal issues here? You can't say you're a sanctuary. Does Kentucky get to say we're going to be a sanctuary state against federal taxes? You can't overturn what the federal Congress is doing. That's not how our system works. And as a governor, you have to follow federal law. These ideas that have not been adequately challenged, in my estimation, of different states and different cities saying they are going to be a sanctuary from federal laws, are themselves grossly illegal. If you want to change the law, you go through Congress to change the federal law. That's the system. You can't pick and choose and cherry pick the laws you're going to follow.
On the other hand, Terry, we just had a U.S. Supreme Court decision that there was a case from the federal appellate court where the appellate court had said basically, this redistricting that went on in Texas, it really wasn't good. It was racist. We're just going to overturn the whole damn thing and knock out that map. And you know what the Supreme said? F you, F you, okay, in more polite language. They said you can't just intervene like the state law doesn't matter.
And I'm
There
sorry,
these
what
things are
state
in
was that?
here. Well, there was the U.S. Supreme Court ruling on the Texas remap.
They okayed that.
They okayed the Texas remap because, Terry, they didn't say what you just implied, that we just look at the federal law. We don't give a rat's ass about the state law. No, that remap came out of the Texas legislature. That was a Texas law, Terry. Texas law.
Where are you arguing it was in violation of federal law?
I'm saying the U.S. Supreme Court said that the federal appellate court was wrong
Right.
to not pay more attention to the Texas law that remapped. So in this case, hold on, Terry.
I don't think that's a good precedent.
Terry, I got to stop you.
We got about 4
You
minutes.
can't take 3 minutes.
Go ahead.
I don't care. You took 4 minutes.
Go ahead.
I'll take 30 seconds. They were saying the federal court, which was looking at the 65 voter, the Voting Act.
Let me cut. You're getting too
Hey,
late. Get to this.
No,
Jeff,
not too
you
technical,
got to
Terry.
get to the point.
Terry, it's not too
The
technical.
U.S. Supreme Court
Terry,
came down and
stop.
said
Terry.
that this did not violate the rights of Hispanic or black vote. They okayed it, the U.S. Supreme Court, because they said it did not violate the voting rights of citizens.
But Terry, more importantly, they said you're going too far. Yes, they said that, but you should know the Supreme Court's very close to overturning the Voting Rights Act, and they probably will within the next year. So that was not the entirety of their decision.
But going
So
back,
my
let me
point to
insert,
you,
because I was saying, talking about
Yeah.
Chicago and Illinois, the sanctuary cities are in violation of federal law. What you're saying in Texas is not an example of being in violation of federal law. The fact that the Supreme Court considers state law is not an issue. The issue with Illinois and Chicago is that they are totally ignoring federal law and not cooperating with federal authorities. This is an entirely different example than what you're citing by bringing up the Texan Voting Act.
well, because they had to balance to some extent the Texas state law with anything that the federal court below was saying about federal law. These things are a little bit more subtle than a 10-second slogan on your license plate. That's the point.
All right. We don't have
The
time.
difference
Look, we
on
don't
the-
have time. Yesterday, we don't have time for the clip. We only got about
You don't
1
have time
minute.
to.
Yesterday, the president went to Pennsylvania. He gave he's on his American Affordability Tour. I bring that up because we're talking in 2026, as we're going to go into it, in an election year, affordability is going to be a factor. The president is saying he's brought down energy prices, he's brought down the price of eggs, he's brought down, as we have now, really it's not him doing it, but the Federal Reserve brought down, as we just reported, the cost of borrowing again by 1/4 point. We shall have to see what are the big implications. What extent will all of this going on in Chicago with the illegals, and also, Jeff, we don't have time to get into it, but what's going on
Can I
with the
close, Terry?
Somalis
Can I
in
say
Minnesota
something?
and the fraud going on? You and I will be covering this. I'll give you the last word. You only got about 20 seconds.
The president needs to go out and say the truth. And the truth of the matter is the price level under Biden was 20% higher. They had a 20% inflation rate of that price level relative to what he started at.
Okay, we got 10
And we
seconds.
can't
I'm
cut
just
pri-
going to cut you off here. We
And
got to
the
say,
president
folks,
should say, we can't cut prices.
we might
can cut
say
the
we
rate of
might see you
growth
next
prices.
week. If we don't, have a great Christmas, and Jeff and I will see you next year.